Yesterday was a big day for the Houston Texans. There were a pair of moves. Let's start off with the one that actually has to do with the long-term future of this franchise. The Texans gave Laremy Tunsil a 3-year, $75 million extension with $60 million in total guarantees. It's the largest contract that Nick Caserio has given out. And Laremy Tunsil is once again the highest paid tackle in NFL history. Considering he negotiated this deal himself, he deserves a lot of credit for being able to pull that off. But he also played his ass off in a contract year. There are some people who aren't the biggest Laremy Tunsil fans. I think it has to do with 2021, where he did not come back to the field after getting hurt. People were like, has he quit on the team at a time where Brandin Cooks was playing his ass off in 2021? Kind of funny to see how that has entirely flipped both of those situations. But this is the first real investment that Nick Caserio has made. Literally, this is the first, I think, 3-year contract I think that the guy's actually given out. And in a conversation I had with a couple of people on Texans Twitter, John Crumpler was one who stepped in. He said, well, I mean, what about Derek Stingley? What about Kenyon Green? What about the Brandin Cooks contract? This deal is different. This deal is a deal that the Texans did not necessarily have to give. I think with Brandin Cooks, they had to because they were trying to figure out what they had in Davis Mills. So they paid him a contract that was not one that would be very movable in the future. They also thought that he wanted to stick around. That's why you pay all that guaranteed money. It was a $39 million contract over 2 years with 36 guaranteed. But from here on out, I think now everyone has to take the kid gloves off with Nick Caserio, and maybe I'm the last to do so. But I feel like Nick Caserio has been in a spot up to this point where he hasn't been truly building anything. It's been a lot of cleaning up the mess of his predecessors, whether it's Bill O'Brien or Jack Easterby. A move like this is essentially creating a symbolic hourglass, and now he has to field a competitor for the remainder of that hourglass. If you get a guy like Laremy Tunsil and you keep him around, you're saying we are not far away from competition, and that better be a competitive product on the field this coming season. I think Caserio gets a lot of crap because of the fact he's from New England. I think a lot of it is stemmed in that. And I understand why, given Jack Easterby, given Bill O'Brien, given other expatriates and how poorly they have fared elsewhere, Josh McDaniels, Matt Patricia. It's a very long list. It's enough of a sample size to make you think that anybody who works there, if they go elsewhere, they're not going to be able to succeed at the same degree. And by the way, who could succeed at the same degree? O'Brien actually is one of the better ones that's left the Bill Belichick coaching tree, if you will.
I think he's by far the most successful.
Right. The problem was him as a general manager, Sean, completely
not so successful. Although he did trade for Laremy Tunsil.
That is true.
So
2 first-round picks for Laremy Tunsil.
Well,
hey,
and a second-rounder for DeAndre Hopkins.
Would you rather the second-rounder for DeAndre Hopkins is bad? Would you rather have 2 first-round picks or Laremy Tunsil? I would rather have Laremy Tunsil.
Yeah.
Laremy Tunsil's worked out. That actually was what you had to give up to get a guy that has proven himself on the NFL stage. Now, going forward, I am not going to be as indifferent when it comes to Caserio. I think now you got to look at everything that he does and grade it appropriately. And that shifts us into the Brandin Cooks trade, which was a fail. That Brandin Cooks trade sucks. He was traded to the Dallas Cowboys yesterday for a 2023 5th-round pick and a 2024 6th-round pick. On top of that, the Texans have agreed to pay $6 million of the Cooks salary in order to make the trade happen. And if I'm not mistaken, making matters worse, there's going to be $22.2 million in dead money for the Texans this year. There's $22 million they can't spend because they traded Brandin Cooks. That sucks. This trade is bad. And look, it's not Nick Casario's fault entirely. I think the only thing you could criticize Casario for as for the way this thing played out is that Cooks is somebody that could have been traded, I guess, for a second and a fourth round pick. That's at least what was rumored coming out of Dallas. The Texans thought they could get more. And obviously now instead they get 2 late round draft picks. This is a great trade for the Dallas Cowboys. But I think afterwards, look at it from this perspective. You wanted to keep him around because he played well for you in 2021. You wanted to give Davis Mills somebody who is good at wide receiver to work with, who has experience in the league. You wanted to see if maybe Mills could be the franchise guy. He wasn't going to be able to do that if Nico Collins was his best wide receiver. And last year, whether it was Pep Hamilton's fault or Brandin Cooks being not as enthused about his time on the Texans because they phased Jack Easterby out, which he weighed in on before he walked away from the team for a couple of days or a week or whatever it was after he wasn't traded by the trade deadline. He made this situation worse. His production declined. That could be Pep Hamilton's fault. That could be Brandin Cooks' fault. And after his production declined, he didn't want to be here anymore. So Nick Casario, after giving him that deal with a loser tax on top of it that incentivized Cooks to stick around, Cooks wanted out. That trade made him practically immovable. And since he didn't want to be here, how much leverage did the Texans really have when it came to trading him? None. So it's bad. This is a bad trade by Casario. I don't think it's entirely his fault.
I didn't see the report that the Texans agreed to pay $6 million of it.
Yeah.
So you're paying $6 million and you only get a fifth and a sixth.
You're paying $6 million. You're right, Sean. You are only getting a fifth and a sixth. And by the way, there's $22 million you can't spend this year.
Yeah,
so it's not like you were going to spend it on anybody, but it's bad. It's bad all around. I think a lot of it has to do with Brandin Cooks, but the kid gloves are off with Nick Casario, and he lost decisively. This is a bad loss by Casario on this trade. I guess we can say, well, at least we can turn the page and you don't have to deal with the Archer anymore. And part of me is happy that the Archer is gone. But at the same time, this was a bad trade. And it has to be criticized as such because my kid gloves are now off with Casario. From here on out, because of that Laremy Tunsil contract, I think it is totally fair to get on his case about anything that happens. And I would say right now, things that are borderline worthy of getting on his case about, Derek Stingley Jr., Kenyon Green, both those first-round picks. Did they succeed last year? Maybe a new scheme helps Derek Stingley out. I don't know that. You don't know that either. Maybe a new scheme helps Kenyon Green out. Maybe not Pep Hamilton helps Kenyon Green out. Maybe a better quarterback helps Kenyon Green out. But he was not good last year after a couple of games where Brian Baldinger was like, wow, I mean, he's a physical guy. Well, what the hell happened the rest of the year? So that, at the end of next season, becomes a lot easier to point the finger at. After year one, you can't go all in with it. But everything going forward with Nick Casario now, there's no more excuses. Even I'm willing to say that. And I'm a guy who actually believes that he's going to be able to get this done.